You have warmth, she gasps, her voice trembling with a strange, melodic undertone that sends a shock through my entire body. Outside, a lethal wind howls against the battered metal of my makeshift shelter, rattling every seam as if the storm is trying to tear it apart. My ribs ache from the crash, my head still ringing, and my breath hangs in the freezing air. Yet none of that compares to the raw jolt of adrenaline I feel when this alien girl, bone pale, eyes too large, ridged skull glimmering with faint golden lines, pulls the flap of my sleeping bag open and slides in beside me. I'm too stunned to react for a second. My first instinct is to shove her away. My second is to demand who she is. But the warmth from my body is apparently all that stands between her and hypothermia, because she presses herself against my side, her slim form trembling. Then she starts purring. It's a low, resonant hum that vibrates through my chest, and every nerve ending I have is on high alert. I manage to find my voice. What the hell do you think you're doing? My tone is a half growl, half desperate gasp, because I've been out in the cold too long, and my lips are stiff. Her cheek slides against my shoulder as she angles her face up to meet my glare. She's so close that I can see her eyes aren't quite human. The pupils are elliptical, the irises shimmering with tiny flecks of gold. Her skin is almost luminescent, faint patterns shifting beneath the surface like hidden veins of light. You have warmth, she repeats, as if that explains everything. The predepens vibrating between us. I need it to survive. You must share. I almost choke on my disbelief. I must? Lady, I don't know who you are or where you came from, but you're not staying in my... The wind howls again, and she curls in closer. Her body is ice cold. She's wearing next to nothing, just a few scraps of pale cloth that cling to her narrow frame, the color almost matching her skin. She's clearly not equipped for these temperatures. My anger flares, but so does something else, an unexpected surge of protectiveness, or maybe just pity. I yank the torn blanket over her to keep the frigid air from seeping in. The smell of scorched wiring and leaking coolant from my destroyed craft mingles with the biting cold. My brain screams that I'm letting a total stranger into my personal space, but my survival instincts remind me, if we don't share body heat, we'll both be dead by morning. She presses her forehead to my shoulder, and the purring grows stronger. I can't deny the bizarre effect it has. My heart pounds as if I'm in combat. My muscles are tense, but my body is also responding to that rhythmic hum. It's soothing, but in a way that feels dangerous. Like she's hacking into my nervous system. Stop that, I mutter, turning my head away. She doesn't answer, only shifts so that our legs entwine beneath the cramped sleeping bag. Her skin is impossibly smooth, and I feel her shivering less now that she's soaking up my heat. Her eyes flutter shut, and she exhales in a slow, trembling breath. The ridges on her skull glow faintly, as if she's regulating her temperature through some internal mechanism I can't begin to understand. I try to steady my breathing. I'm Kale, I remind myself. I've survived planetary invasions, mercenary raids, betrayals. I've scrounged a living on half a dozen hostile worlds. A single alien crawling into my sleeping bag shouldn't rattle me this much. But it does. Because she's pressed against me, purring, and it feels weirdly intimate. What's your name? I demand. If we're going to be forced into this claustrophobic situation, I at least want to know who I'm about to freeze or survive with. Her eyes flick open. RHY they, she answers softly. Her voice has that same melodic quality, like a half-forgotten lullaby. You are Kale? I stiffen. How do you know that? I've never met her before. My name shouldn't mean anything to her. She shifts, confusion crossing her delicate features. I heard it, she says, sounding uncertain. When you shouted at your device. She nods at the busted comm unit lying in the corner, battered by the crash. Right. I must have cursed my own name at some point when everything went to hell. I grunt, tension thrumming in my neck. All right, RHY they. I don't know what you are, or why you're here, but let's get one thing straight. I pull the blanket higher, trying to maintain some barrier between us, though it's useless. This is just survival, got it? Once the storm passes, we go our separate ways. Her brow furrows, the golden lines on her skull pulsing faintly. Separate ways? Her voice wavers, like she's unfamiliar with the concept. That's right. I snap, ignoring the purr that resonates through my sternum every time she exhales. I'm not your caretaker. I'm not your anything. We share heat so we don't freeze to death, and that's it. She seems puzzled, maybe even hurt, but she doesn't protest. Instead, she closes her eyes again, as if my words don't matter compared to the necessity of survival. Her fingers splay across my chest, and I realize she's feeling my heartbeat. I try to push her hand away, but she tightens her grip with surprising strength. Let go, I warn, but my voice comes out ragged. The storm outside is intensifying. The temperature in here is dropping. The structural integrity of this battered shelter might fail at any second. Everything in me wants to be up, moving, fixing the hull breach, checking the generator. But I'm pinned beneath a slender alien girl who claims she'll die if she doesn't share my warmth, and my body is already giving in to exhaustion. I have no choice but to let her remain. The purring continues, deepening into a vibration that sets my teeth on edge. Yet there's an odd comfort to it that I hate myself for noticing. I squeeze my eyes shut, letting the darkness swallow the flickering emergency light. My arms end up around her, and I tell myself it's just to keep the heat contained. Her cheek rests against my collarbone. She smells faintly of something floral, alien but not unpleasant. For a long moment, we lie there, two strangers forced into an intimacy neither of us wanted. My pulse is hammering, and I have to fight the urge to push her away or pull her closer. I'm not sure which is stronger. Suddenly, the wind rattles the shelter's metal plating, and a shrill screech tears through the night. My eyes fly open. That sound wasn't the storm. I jerk upright, they clinging to me with startled alarm. The purring cuts off as she lifts her head. Something's out there, I whisper. Her eyes flick to the battered door. There's a faint hiss of escaping air from the damaged seals. The temperature is dropping faster now, and I know we can't stay put much longer. We have to move, I say, pushing the sleeping bag aside. She grips my wrist, her eyes flashing with alarm. Move where? She asks, her voice trembling. The storm. I don't care about the storm. My adrenaline surges, erasing the last vestiges of numbness. I grab my sidearm, checking the power cell. Half charge. If something's out there, we can't just wait for it to tear through these walls. I push to my feet, ignoring the icy blast that makes my limbs spasm. They clambers up, hugging herself. She's shivering again. Her clothing is more decorative than functional, leaving most of her pale torso exposed. My eyes flick over the ridges on her skull and the golden lines that pulse along her temples. For a moment I feel a tug of something. Pity? Fascination? Desire? I crush it under the weight of survival instinct. Stay behind me, I say. She nods, pressing close, and I try to ignore the warmth of her body against my back. I shoulder the half-broken hatch open, stepping into the raging snowstorm. Immediately, ice-laden winds slice at my face. Visibility is nearly zero. I curse under my breath. The hiss is louder out here, an eerie, screeching cry carried by the wind. My crashed craft is a smoldering wreck a few yards away, half buried in drifts. I'd been lucky to survive the impact. Lucky again to find that small shelter module. Now I have no idea how I'm going to get off this godforsaken moon. One crisis at a time, Kale. I wave they forward, and she clings to me, her slender arms trembling from the cold. The purr tries to start up again, but she stifles it, maybe sensing I need silence. We pick our way around the jagged shards of metal that used to be my ship's hull. The storm tears at us, and I have to wrap an arm around her shoulders to keep her upright. She's so light, it feels like the wind could fling her away if I let go. We round the corner of the wreckage, and that's when I see it, a dark silhouette against the swirling snow. Something hunched, maybe four-legged, with luminous eyes. My breath catches. I raise my sidearm, heart pounding. The creature snarls, revealing a mouth full of serrated teeth. Another one joins it, then a third. They're pack hunters, likely drawn by the smell of the crash or the possibility of an easy meal. RHY's grip tightens on my arm. What are those? She whispers, voice barely audible over the gale. I don't know, I admit. Not friendly. I aim at the closest shape. A flick of the sidearm's trigger sends a bolt of crackling energy sizzling through the air. It misses, exploding in a burst of steam as it hits the snow. The creatures snarl and scatter, circling. One leaps forward, claws raking the ground. I fire again, catching it in the flank. It howls, a horrid sound that merges with the wind. The other two dart in from the sides. RHY moves behind me, pressing her body into mine. The contact distracts me for half a heartbeat, long enough for one creature to lunge. I twist, shoving RHY aside, and manage to plant a boot in its chest, knocking it back. My sidearm hums as I pull the trigger. The shot lights up the storm in a flash of neon, and the creature collapses in a smoking heap. But the third one seizes the chance to leap at RHY. She screams, stumbling in the snow. My blood turns to ice. I spin, dropping to a knee, and fire. The blast grazes the thing's shoulder. It shrieks, claws slashing the air. RHY throws up her hands, and I see a flicker of gold from her palms. Something pulses outward, a low, throbbing wave of sound that resonates in my bones. The creature jerks back, disoriented, as if that alien hum has scrambled its senses. I don't hesitate. I empty 2 more shots into its chest. It collapses, whimpering. Then it goes still. My breath hitches in my throat. RHY's eyes are wide, her lips parted in terror. The swirling wind tears at our clothes, and the lifeless bodies of those beasts lie in the snow. We have no idea if more are coming. We can't stay here. I shout over the storm. She nods, teeth chattering. Where do we go? She asks. I don't have a good answer. My ship is destroyed, and the shelter module is no safer. But I remember glimpsing a rocky ridge not far from the crash site. Maybe we can find a cave or some kind of windbreak. I grab her hand, ignoring the jolt of heat that flares at the contact. We trudge forward through the waist-deep snow, buffeted by gusts that threaten to knock us flat. My mind whirls with questions. Who is she? Why does she purr like that? Why is her body so cold? But I focus on survival first. I've learned the hard way that in a crisis, curiosity comes second to staying alive. We slip and stumble across the frozen landscape, the snow reflecting a pale gray light from the cloud-shrouded sky. At times, I think I see shapes moving in the distance, but it might just be the wind playing tricks. After what feels like an eternity, we reach the ridge. Jagged rocks jut upward, forming a natural barrier against the worst of the storm. I find a shallow crevice that offers minimal shelter, but it's better than nothing. We duck inside, pressing our backs against the icy stone. I'm panting, sweat freezing on my forehead, my limbs shaking from the cold and exertion. RHY huddles close, her body shuddering with each breath. She tries to speak, but the wind tears her words away. I look down at my sidearm. The power cell is dangerously low. 1 or 2 more shots, maybe. We're trapped here until the storm eases, and we have no real supplies besides the battered sleeping bag, some emergency rations in my coat, and the clothes on our backs. My mind scrambles for solutions. If I can find a way to signal for help, but my comm is broken. If we can wait out the storm, maybe I can scavenge parts from the wreckage tomorrow. RHY touches my arm, drawing my gaze. Her lips are nearly blue, and her ridged skull has dimmed, no longer glowing. She manages to speak, though her teeth chatter violently. We must share warmth again. Or we won't survive. I swallow hard, glancing around the tiny crevice. There's barely room to sit side by side. The wind still whips in, carrying flurries of snow, but at least we're not fully exposed. My instincts scream at me to keep distance, to trust no one, especially not an alien who purrs and claims we're bonded by heat. but I can see her fading before my eyes. If she dies, I'm alone here, and my own odds aren't great. With a grimace, I slide down, opening the battered sleeping bag as best I can. Get in, I say, my voice harsher than I intend. She nods and crawls in next to me. Her skin is like ice. Instantly, she curls against my chest, pressing her face into the hollow of my neck. I feel her breath, ragged and desperate. I wrap the top of the sleeping bag around us, trying to seal in whatever heat we can. Then comes that purring again, softer this time, but it resonates in the cramped space, echoing off the stone walls. My pulse kicks up. I can't help it. You need to cut that out, I mutter, though there's no real conviction in my voice. The truth is, that sound is starting to feel strangely comforting. She doesn't respond, just burrows closer. The storm rages outside, and for a moment, all I can think about is how surreal this is, me, Kale, a drifter with too many scars, huddled in a frozen crevice on a godforsaken moon, with an alien who clings to me like I'm her only lifeline. Which, in a way, I guess I am. She shifts, and I become acutely aware of how her minimal clothing leaves most of her body pressed directly against mine. The friction of skin on skin, even in this frigid environment, sends warmth flooding through me. I try to ignore the tug of desire that coils in my stomach. This is about survival, I remind myself. But my body isn't listening. She lifts her gaze, her eyes catching a faint reflection of light, and I see confusion there. Why do you resist? She asks softly. Her voice trembles, but not just from cold. There's something else, hurt maybe, or curiosity. We share warmth. It is necessary. But you seem angry. I exhale a shaky breath. I'm not angry. I lie. I am angry, at the universe for stranding me here, at myself for letting her get under my skin, at her for purring like that, which does something weird to my head. I just don't trust easily. She blinks, as if she doesn't fully comprehend the concept. Your trust is not required. Only your warmth. Her bluntness throws me off. For a second, I almost laugh, but the gravity of our situation keeps my expression grim. Great, I mutter. That's all I am to you, then? A heat source? She tilts her head, the ridges on her skull catching a brief glint of pale light. That is how it begins, she says. But your presence, there is more. Her cheeks flush slightly, and I realize that her skin tone shifts with emotion, faint gold patterns swirling beneath the surface. The purring becomes a bit louder, almost a rumble. Your scent. Your heartbeat. My body responds. I don't know how to reply to that. My throat feels tight, and I can't deny the attraction that's stirring in me, no matter how much I want to. The closeness, the adrenaline, the forced intimacy, it's all twisting my senses. I close my eyes, trying to center myself, but I can still hear her purring, feel her breath, smell her delicate scent that's half floral, half something else. Just stay alive, I finally say, keeping my voice low. We'll figure out the rest later. She nods, resting her forehead against my chest. I wrap an arm around her, cursing the universe under my breath, and wait for the storm to abate. Time blurs in the darkness. My thoughts drift to the life I left behind, mercenary gigs gone sour, a string of betrayals, my vow never to let anyone get close again. Yet here I am, letting an alien cling to me for dear life. I feel the steady rise and fall of her rib cage against mine, the flutter of her eyelids as she tries to stay conscious. My own eyelids grow heavy. Eventually, exhaustion wins. I slip into a fitful doze, still half alert for danger, sidearm clutched in my free hand. When I jolt awake, the purring has stopped, replaced by a tense silence. I lift my head, noticing a dim gray light outside the crevice. Dawn, maybe? The storm has lessened, though the wind still hisses. I peer over RHY's shoulder and see footprints in the snow, human footprints, or something close. My pulse spikes. Someone else has been here, close enough to see us if they wanted. I nudge RHY gently. Her eyes flutter open, and she looks at me with that soft, alien gaze. We have to move, I whisper. We're not alone. She nods, slipping out of the sleeping bag with more agility than I'd expect after such a brutal night. I gather what little gear I have. My sidearm, a half-ruined data pad, a combat knife. My mind races. Who found us? Or was just passing by? We leave the crevice, and the cold is still punishing, but at least the gale has died down enough that we can see more than a few feet ahead. The snow is knee-deep, crunching under our boots. Rhy clings to my arm, her bare feet, if you can call those slender, three-toed things, feet, nearly numb. I curse myself for not grabbing extra boots from the ship, but there was no time. We trudge back toward the wreckage, hoping maybe we can salvage supplies. That's when I spot movement behind a ridge of twisted metal. Get down! I hiss, pulling Rhy to the ground. We crouch behind a jagged panel of hull plating. My heart thuds. Slowly, I peer around the edge. Two figures in dark survival gear are picking through the wreckage. They're armed, scanning the debris as if searching for something. Maybe me. Maybe Rhy. I clench my jaw. If they're here to help, they'd be calling out, right? Instead, they're creeping around like predators. I watch as one lifts a scanning device, pointing it toward the remains of the shelter module. Rhy presses close, her breath hot on my ear. Who are they? She whispers. I shake my head. Could be scavengers, mercenaries, or bounty hunters. I've made plenty of enemies. Then again, she might have enemies of her own. Doesn't matter, I whisper back. They're armed. We can't take them head-on with my sidearm nearly drained. I weigh my options. We can try to sneak around them, or we can create a diversion. Or maybe, we can let them fix my ship, if they have the means, and then steal it back. But that's a long shot. Rhy's eyes narrow. They want you, she says. I glance at her sharply. They have a device scanning for your heat signature. My gut twists. She might be right. If they're scanning for life signs, we'll be found eventually. Unless. I tug her arm, leading her away from the wreckage. We circle around, keeping low, stepping carefully to avoid crunching snow. The footprints I saw earlier must have been theirs. I'm not sure how many there are in total. We creep through the twisted landscape of metal shards and ice, my teeth chattering as I fight the lingering cold. Rhy's purse starts to build again, so faint I almost miss it, but I sense it in my chest. She's nervous. Maybe that's her species' way of coping. I gesture for silence, and she nods, trying to stifle the sound. We manage to slip past the line of debris, then break into a sprint across open snow. My boots sink with each step, and I have to practically drag Rhy, who can't get much traction in her bare feet. My breath rasps in my throat, every exhalation clouding the air. I half expect a warning shot to crack past my head, but the wind remains the only roar behind us. Maybe they haven't seen us yet. A ridge looms ahead, a cluster of jagged ice formations that might hide us. I push forward, lungs burning. Rhy stumbles, and I hoist her up, ignoring the ache in my arms. At last, we collapse behind an outcrop of ice, gasping for air. My heart pounds so loudly that I'm sure it can be heard from miles away. Rhy looks at me, her face pale and drawn. We cannot keep running, she murmurs. You are injured. And my body is not meant for this cold. She's right. My ribs are killing me, and she's clearly suffering. We need shelter, supplies, maybe a plan. But my mind is spinning with adrenaline. I check my sidearm's power cell. 1 shot left, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. Not enough to fight off a well-armed group. Listen, I say, swallowing hard. If those people are after me, I can lead them away from you. You can hide. The words taste bitter. I hate the idea of leaving her alone, but what choice do I have? She looks at me with a strange expression, her eyes shimmering. You think I would let you go alone? She asks, almost offended. We have shared warmth. You are bound to me. I grimace. Stop saying that. We're not bound, all right? We just... She shakes her head, pressing a hand to her sternum. My people's biology. When we share body heat for survival, The purring, the contact, it forges a connection. You cannot simply leave me. I want to argue, to tell her that I'm not bound to anyone. But her words stir something in me, something I can't quite deny. I remember the look in her eyes, the feeling of her body against mine in that sleeping bag, how it ignited a rush of emotions I've tried to bury for years. Damn it. This is exactly why I didn't want to let anyone close. Fine, I say at last, scowling. But don't expect me to. A shout in the distance cuts me off. We both freeze. Someone must have spotted us. My heart seizes. Go! I hiss, grabbing our HY's hand. We scramble along the ridge, searching for any opening or cave we can hide in. The ice cracks beneath us in places, revealing black chasms below. We're on dangerously thin ground. Another step, and we might plunge into a crevasse. A bolt of energy sears past us, smashing into the ice and sending shards flying. RHY the yelps. I curse under my breath, ducking behind a pillar of frozen water. My sidearm is basically worthless for a real firefight. Another shot slams into the ice, and I realize we're cornered. We can't outrun them on this terrain, and we have no cover to fight back effectively. I grit my teeth. Stay down, I whisper. RHY presses herself flat against the ice. I lean out just enough to see two figures approaching, rifles raised. Their black visors reflect the pale light. They move with practiced efficiency, flanking our position. My heart thuds. This is it. I have 1 or 2 shots left, and then I'm done. My gaze flicks to RHY. Her eyes are wide, fear etched across her face. I don't want her to die here. Not after everything. I steel myself, preparing to step out and open fire, hoping maybe I can take one down before the other kills me. But a glimmer of gold catches my eye. RHY is pressing her hands together, her ridged skull glowing. I realize she's doing that same trick she used on the beast, some kind of sonic pulse. She glances at me, question in her eyes, as if asking for permission. I nod sharply. We have no other option. She steps out from behind the ice pillar, arms raised. The purr in her chest morphs into a rumbling chant. The two figures freeze, aiming their rifles at her. One yells something unintelligible. Then RHY releases a wave of sound so deep it makes my teeth rattle. The air vibrates, and I see the snow shift in concentric ripples around her. The figures stagger, rifles dropping as they clutch at their helmets. It's like their senses are scrambled, equilibrium shattered. I don't hesitate. I leap out, sidearm raised. My shot catches one figure in the chest, knocking them flat. The second one tries to lift their rifle, but I slam into them, grappling for control. They're stronger than I expect, or maybe I'm just exhausted. We tumble across the ice, fists flying. RHY's sonic wave stops abruptly, probably to avoid hitting me. I manage to drive my knee into the figure's gut, wrestle the rifle away, and crack them across the helmet with the butt. They go limp. Panting, I roll off them, my body trembling from the sudden burst of violence. RHY rushes to my side, her eyes flicking between me and the unconscious figure. I can't believe we actually pulled that off. But I know it's not over. Where there are two, there might be more. We have to move, and fast. I strip one figure of their gear, taking a functional comm unit, a sidearm with a fresh power cell, and some rations. The helmet is cracked, but the body armor might still help. RHY kneels by the other figure, eyes narrowed. She lifts a small emblem from their jacket, studying it. Her expression turns grim. You know who they are? I ask, still breathing hard. She nods. They are hired by my people. They must have followed me here. That sends a chill down my spine. Your people? I echo. You mean, you're not just some random traveler? She swallows, golden lines shifting across her temples. I am RHY Tal-Air. It is complicated. But they want me returned. I stare at her. Your royalty? That might explain her strange attire, the regal posture, the bizarre powers. My gut twists. Great. That's just perfect. So they're here to take you back, and I'm just collateral damage? She lowers her gaze. I do not know what they will do to you if they find us together. My father would see you punished for claiming me. My jaw drops. Claiming you? I didn't claim anything. Her eyes flash with that alien intensity. We shared warmth. My people view that as a bond, especially with the Purring. They will assume it was intentional. I can't believe what I'm hearing. All this trouble because she crawled into my sleeping bag. That's insane, I mutter, shaking my head. But the panic is rising in my chest. If her people are so fanatical that they send armed hunters, this is bigger than I thought. All right, I say, forcing a steady breath. We need to get off this moon. Now. You said these guys followed you. Does that mean there's a ship nearby? She nods. Likely. They would not travel here without one. But it will be guarded. Fine. Then we find it, we figure out a way past their guards, and we get the hell out of here. My words come out more confident than I feel. But I have no choice. I glance at the unconscious mercenaries. They won't stay out forever. I quickly scavenge the second figure's gear, ignoring the uneasy feeling in my gut. This is a precarious alliance, me and a supposed alien heir. But the alternative is freezing to death or getting shot. They stands close, watching me with a mix of concern and trust. The memory of her purring against my chest stirs again, and I shove it down. This is survival, nothing more. Let's move, I say. She nods, and we set off across the ice once more, hoping to find the ship that brought these hunters here. The cold stings my face, but I feel her presence at my side, radiating a strange energy that makes the hair on my arms stand on end. I tell myself not to get attached, not to feel anything for her. But deep down, I know it's too late. We trudge in tense silence, scanning the horizon. The battered landscape offers little in the way of cover, just jagged ice pillars and snowdrifts. My stolen rifle weighs on my shoulder, a comforting burden. They occasionally glances at me, her expression unreadable. I wonder if she regrets sharing warmth with a human, if she's already thinking about how to sever this bond she claims we have. Part of me hopes she is, because the idea of any bond terrifies me more than these mercenaries. After about an hour, we spot a faint glow in the distance. A silhouette of a small vessel rests on a plateau of ice, illuminated by running lights. My pulse quickens. That must be our ticket out. But as we approach, we see figures patrolling around it, at least 4. They carry rifles similar to the ones we faced. My mind races. We can't take on 4 trained guards in open terrain. They touches my arm. We can distract them, she whispers. If I use my voice, you can pick them off. I grimace. That trick might work once, but they'll adapt. And we only have so many shots. I check the power cells in the rifles we stole. Decent, but not enough for a prolonged shootout. We need a plan. My gaze sweeps the area. The ship is perched near the edge of a deep crevasse, probably to block the wind. If we can get them to chase us around the ship, maybe we can board from the other side. But that's risky. Before I can finalize a plan, they tugs my sleeve. Look, she murmurs. I follow her gaze. Another craft, bigger, is descending from the murky sky, kicking up a swirl of snow. Reinforcements. My stomach sinks. If we wait, we'll be outnumbered. If we rush, we might be gunned down. But we have no choice. We have to move now, or never. All right, I say, heart pounding. We'll cause a distraction. I'll draw their fire, you circle around. When I give the signal, you use that sonic blast. I'll take out whoever's left. Then we get on the ship and figure out how to fly it. She nods, though I see fear in her eyes. I realize this is insane. 2 half-frozen fugitives against a squad of armed hunters on an ice moon. But I've never been one for good odds anyway. I take a breath, meet her gaze. Ready? She sets her jaw, golden lines flaring across her skull. Yes. We move, splitting up around a broken ridge of ice. My heart hammers as I creep closer to the unsuspecting guards. They stand by the ship's loading ramp, scanning the horizon. One smokes a vapor stick, exhaling a plume of blue haze. Another taps at a handheld device. None of them seem to notice me yet. My breath steams in the cold as I raise the rifle, bracing it against my shoulder. I aim for the closest guard. My finger tightens on the trigger. A shot rings out. The guard crumples. The others spin, shouting. I bolt from cover, drawing their attention. Bolts of energy sizzle past me, exploding ice at my feet. I return fire, my stolen rifle humming. One guard goes down, but the others are advancing. My heart slams in my chest. Where's RHY? Then I hear it, that deep, resonant hum. It swells into a wave of sonic force that ripples the air. The guards stagger, clutching their helmets. I take aim, picking them off one by one. The last tries to crawl behind a crate, but I catch him with a clean shot. He collapses. My lungs burn from the exertion, and my shoulder aches from recoil. But we did it. The guards are down, and the ship is unguarded. RHY rushes over, breathing heavily. Her face is pale, but there's a fierce determination in her eyes. We share a brief nod, then race up the loading ramp. The interior is cramped, designed for a small crew. We seal the hatch behind us. My fingers shake as I press the console to initiate takeoff, but a security lock flashes on the screen. Damn it! I hiss. We need a clearance code. RHY steps up beside me, her hand trembling as she places it on the console. Her skin glows faintly. I hear a series of chirps, then the lock disengages. The engines hum to life. My eyes widen. How? She grimaces. I have certain permissions. My father's codes are universal. He never expected I would use them against his own men. I don't question it. The engines spool up, and I wrestle with the controls. The craft lurches into the air, buffeted by the frigid wind. Alarms blare. I see the other, larger vessel hovering a short distance away. They're trying to hail us, or maybe lock onto us. My stomach twists. We're not out of danger yet. I throw the throttle forward, fighting the controls. The small ship shoots across the ice, nearly skimming the surface. RHY's knuckles whiten as she clings to the co-pilot's seat. The bigger vessel pivots to pursue. My heart pounds. We can't outrun a bigger ship for long, especially not if they have better weapons. We need to lose them in the atmosphere or find a jump gate. But I have no idea where we are or if a jump gate is even in range. A proximity alarm shrieks. Laser fire scorches past our hull, rattling the interior. RHY gasps, and I grit my teeth. Hang on! I growl, yanking the controls. We dive between jagged ice spires that rise like spears from the moon's surface. The larger ship follows, but it's heavier, less maneuverable. I weave between pillars, ignoring the screech of metal when we scrape too close. Another blast sears our flank, and the console sparks. We're losing power. RHY's eyes are fixed on the sensor display. They're closing in. She warns. I can feel it. My breath comes in ragged gulps. The only option is to break atmosphere and hope we can outrun them in orbit. I yank back on the controls, and the ship angles skyward, thrusters roaring. The ice spires vanish beneath us, replaced by swirling clouds. Gravity presses us into our seats. The hull groans under the strain. The larger vessel is still behind us, its engines thundering. Suddenly, the console flashes red. Missile lock! I mutter. My blood runs cold. RHY's hands hover over the controls, searching for a defense system. She finds it, activating countermeasures. A burst of flares erupts behind us. For a heartbeat, the lock breaks. But then the alarm resumes, and I know we won't dodge the next one. RHY glances at me, terror in her eyes. Kale, she whispers. I refuse to let it end here. With a snarl, I slam the throttle to maximum. We burst through the upper cloud layer, the sky darkening into the blackness of space. The stars glimmer overhead, a vast emptiness that offers no sanctuary. The enemy vessel breaks through the clouds behind us, unleashing a hail of laser fire. Our shields flicker, nearly overloaded. My mind races. We need a jump point, some corridor out of this system. I slam a fist on the NAV controls, scanning for any sign of a wormhole or gate. Nothing. Just a bleak readout. My heart sinks, but I can't give up. I push the engines past their limit, ignoring the alarms. The hull temperature spikes. If we keep this up, we'll burn out. RHY suddenly points to the sensor array. There, she says, voice trembling. I see a faint signature, an ancient orbital station, derelict, drifting in the moon's orbit. It might have jump capabilities or at least a place to hide. Without a better plan, I steer us toward it. The larger vessel is still on our tail, but maybe we can use the station's debris as cover. The station looms ahead, a ring of twisted metal and defunct modules. I thread the ship through the broken segments, heart pounding. The bigger ship follows, but they have to slow to avoid collisions. I spot an airlock half functioning, big enough for our craft. Hold on! I shout. We jolt as we latch onto the docking clamp. The hull screeches. I shut down the engines, letting the station's spin pull us inside. Then we slam the hatch shut behind us, sealing ourselves into a pressurized docking bay. The bigger vessel can't fit. We're safe, for now. Panting, I unbuckle and help RHY from her seat. The ship's interior is dim, lights flickering. We can't stay here long. The station might not even have life support. But it's a chance to regroup, maybe find a hidden corridor. The adrenaline still pulses through my veins, and I notice how RHY leans against me, her body shaking. I realize we've been running non-stop, battered by cold, fear, and near-death experiences. My arms slip around her waist, steadying her. She looks up, eyes shimmering. The purr starts again, a soft rumble in her chest. I open my mouth to speak, but nothing comes out. Instead, I pull her closer, letting her rest her head against my shoulder. The reality of our bond, this forced intimacy, hits me all over again. I'm not sure if I hate it or need it. Eventually, I clear my throat and guide her toward the ship's exit. The docking bay is silent except for the faint hum of failing machinery. We need to see if there's a control room, I say. She nods, her hands slipping into mine. I tense, but I don't pull away. Together, we step onto the station, uncertain if we'll find salvation or another trap. We move through dim corridors, lit by emergency lights. The air is stale, but breathable for now. I keep my stolen rifle at the ready, scanning each intersection for signs of movement. RHY's purring fades, replaced by a quiet alertness. She's trembling, though, and I realize she's still cold. I shrug off my jacket, draping it around her shoulders. She looks at me with a mixture of gratitude and something else, affection maybe. Thank you, she whispers. I give a curt nod, not trusting my voice. If I speak, I might say something I'll regret. She doesn't press. We continue on, passing rows of sealed doors. Some are jammed, others lead to pitch-black compartments. The station must have been abandoned for years, maybe decades. Rust and frost line the walls. Our footsteps echo. At last, we find a control room, the door half open. Inside, consoles blink with weak power. I set the rifle down and approach the main panel. If we can reactivate the station's sensors, maybe we can find a hidden jump route, I mutter. RHY stands beside me, her slender fingers dancing over the controls with surprising ease. The panel flickers to life, displaying a star map. My heart lifts, maybe we have a chance. We search for any sign of a functional gate or wormhole generator. The data is ancient, but we find a listing for an old jump corridor about half a system away. If we can repair the station's broadcast array, we might be able to send a signal to open it. It's a long shot, but better than nothing. I turn to RHY, meeting her gaze. We'll need time to fix it. The hunters might try to board the station. She presses her lips together, nodding. Then we must hurry. We set to work, me prying open access panels, her using her odd knowledge and codes to bypass security locks. The station creaks around us, and I'm painfully aware that the enemy ship might be outside, waiting for us to emerge. My chest tightens every time I think of the possibility that we might be cornered. But RHYD's presence keeps me focused. Despite everything, her calm determination is infectious. After what feels like hours, we manage to reroute power to the broadcast array. The lights flare, consoles humming. I let out a shaky breath. All right, let's see if we can activate that jump corridor. RHYD inputs a series of commands, her golden lines pulsing with concentration. The screen displays a countdown. My heart races. We might actually pull this off. Then the station's sensors register a docking clamp. Another ship has latched on. My stomach lurches. They're here. I grab my rifle, adrenaline surging. RHYD looks at me with fear. We can't fight them all, she whispers. I grit my teeth, glancing at the countdown. We need a few minutes for the corridor to align. Minutes we might not have. I snarl a curse, then motion for her to hide behind a console. The door to the control room hisses open. Armed figures spill in, rifles raised. I recognize the same insignia on their armor. RHYD's father's men, presumably. One steps forward, helmet removed, revealing a stern, pale face with the same ridged skull as RHYD, though broader and marked by scars. He sneers at me, then spots her behind the console. Princess, he says in a cold voice. You've caused enough trouble. Come quietly, or watch this human die. I tighten my grip on the rifle. My instincts scream to open fire, but there are at least 4 of them. RHYD stands trembling, but her eyes harden. Leave him out of this, she demands. He only helped me survive. The alien soldier laughs. Survive? You've bonded with him, by your own admission. That is treason against your lineage. His gaze flicks to me, full of contempt. Human, step away from her. Now. My jaw clenches. I consider my odds. If I step away, they might kill me anyway. If I fight, they might kill her. RHYD's purring starts again, involuntarily, and I see the soldiers react with revulsion. To them, her purr is a sign of deep intimacy. They probably think I forced her. Rage builds in my chest. I decide in a split second. I raise the rifle and fire. The shot catches one soldier in the shoulder, spinning him around. Chaos erupts. RHYD releases a sonic blast, staggering the others. I dive behind a console as energy bolts rip through the air, scorching metal. The console sparks, partially shielding me. I return fire, adrenaline pumping. RHYD's blast disorients 2 soldiers, but the leader weathers it, roaring in fury. He charges forward, tackling me. My rifle skitters away. We grapple, fists slamming into each other. He's strong, and my ribs scream in pain as he lands a blow. I manage to headbutt him, sending him staggering. Then RHYD steps in, pressing her palms to his chest, releasing another sonic pulse point blank. He collapses, unconscious or worse. Panting, I scramble to my feet. Smoke fills the room, sparks raining from damaged consoles. 2 more soldiers remain, pinned behind debris. I spot them reloading. Before I can act, the entire station shudders. The ancient structure is failing under this onslaught. A deep groan reverberates through the floor. A panel overhead bursts in a shower of sparks, and the emergency lighting flickers. RHYD stumbles, nearly falling. I catch her arm. We lock eyes. The jump corridor, she gasps. I glance at the countdown. Seconds remain. If we don't get back to our ship now, we'll miss our chance. I sling her arm over my shoulder, and we bolt for the exit, ignoring the soldiers behind us. Let them chase us if they can. We sprint through the corridors, each footstep echoing with the station's death throes. The docking bay is just ahead, but I hear gunfire behind us. RHYD stumbles, her strength waning. I grit my teeth, half carrying her. The purring has faded to a faint tremor. I can't let them take her. Not after all this. At last, we reach our stolen craft. I slam the hatch shut behind us, and the docking clamp releases. The station's gravity well tries to pull us back, but I fire the thrusters. We shoot out into space, the battered hull rattling. The jump corridor flickers into existence, a swirling vortex of pale light. I aim the nose of the craft at it, praying it's stable. Another barrage of laser fire from the enemy vessel lights up our shields, which are barely holding. The corridor pulses, seconds from collapsing. Hold on! I shout. Archwide grips the seat, her face pale. We plunge into the corridor. The ship shudders violently, alarms shrieking. My vision blurs as we're stretched through a tunnel of light, reality warping around us. Then, with a final lurch, we burst out into normal space. The corridor snaps shut behind us. Silence. My ears ring. The console sputters, showing minimal power. We're floating in an uncharted sector, stars glittering all around. We made it. I exhale a shaky laugh, hardly believing it. Rhy sags in her seat, closing her eyes. Her body trembles, and I realize she's on the verge of collapse. I unbuckle, moving to her side, pressing a hand to her cheek. She's cold again. Always so cold. She opens her eyes, looking up at me with an unreadable expression. We escaped, she whispers. I nod, swallowing hard. The tension, the fear, the relief, it all comes crashing down on me at once. Before I can overthink it, I pull her into my arms, burying my face against her neck. She stiffens for a heartbeat, then relaxes, her slender arms wrapping around my waist. The purr returns, deeper than ever. Are you hurt? I manage to ask, my voice husky. She shakes her head slightly, though she's clearly exhausted. We stay like that for a moment, breathing in tandem. The hum of the ship's engines is a low comfort. Outside, the stars stretch on, endless. We have no plan, no destination, no idea what waits for us out here. But for now, we're alive. Together. She lifts her gaze, her ridged skull faintly glowing with that gold light. Kale, she murmurs, her voice trembling with something that feels dangerously close to affection. Thank you? I swallow, my throat tight. I didn't do it for you. I lie. She smiles, as if she sees right through me. Her fingers trace the collar of my shirt, the purring intensifying. My pulse stutters. The memory of her pressed against me in that sleeping bag, the warmth we shared, floods my mind. This is more than survival now, and we both know it. I clear my throat and pull back, though my hands linger on her shoulders. We should check the ship. See what we have for supplies, find a heading. She nods, letting me put some distance between us. But the tension remains, crackling in the air. Neither of us can forget how close we came to losing each other. I set the autopilot to drift while I search the compartments. We find a small stash of rations, a med kit, and some personal items that belong to the mercenaries who owned this craft. Rhy watches me, her eyes flicking to the door that leads to the cramped sleeping quarters. I see the question in her gaze. Where do we sleep? The question makes my heart skip. I recall her shivering body pressed to mine, the purring that lulled me into a strange sense of comfort. I clench my jaw, trying to stay focused. We'll figure out a system, I mutter. Take shifts. One sleeps, the other keeps watch. She studies me for a moment, then nods. Yes, she says, but I sense the disappointment in her tone. She knows I'm putting distance between us. Maybe she even understands why. I can't afford to care too much, not when we're both fugitives with no safe haven. Caring leads to loss. I've learned that lesson too many times. But when she tries to stand, her legs buckle. I rush forward, catching her. Her eyes flutter, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She's pushing herself beyond her limits. Without a word, I lift her into my arms. She weighs almost nothing. She doesn't protest, just rests her head against my shoulder, purring softly. My chest tightens. Damn it, Kale, don't let this get to you. I carry her to the sleeping quarters, which is barely more than a closet with a bunk. Carefully, I set her down, grabbing a spare blanket from the overhead compartment. She looks up at me, her eyes half-lidded. Stay, she whispers, her voice drowsy. It is warmer when you're near. I swallow hard. I'll be right outside, I say, turning away. She doesn't argue, just closes her eyes, the purr fading into a quiet hum. I linger for a moment, torn between the desire to lie down beside her and the fear of what that closeness would mean. Then I force myself to leave, sliding the door shut behind me. Alone in the corridor, I let out a ragged breath, leaning against the wall. My mind is a mess of conflicting emotions. This alien girl has upended my life in a matter of hours, forging a bond that feels uncomfortably real. My rational side screams that I should keep my distance, treat her like a companion of convenience. But the memory of her body trembling against mine, the way she looked at me with those luminous eyes, it's etched into my soul. I push off the wall, forcing myself to check the cockpit. The sensors show empty space, no pursuers. We're adrift in a silent sector, with no immediate threats. That should calm me, but it doesn't. My thoughts drift back to her. I picture her sleeping, her breath steady, the faint glow of her skull ridges pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Something stirs in me, a protectiveness I've never felt for anyone else. It scares me more than any mercenary ever could. Time crawls. Eventually, I realize I'm starving. I find the rations and force down a protein bar that tastes like chalk. My eyes keep darting to the door of the sleeping quarters. Part of me wants to barge in and hold her, just to feel that insane purring vibrate through my chest again. Another part insists I stay away, keep it professional. She's an alien princess, or heir, or something. Her father's men are hunting us across the galaxy. There's no future in this, no matter how intense the attraction might be. But the memory of her near-frozen body curled against me is too strong. Before I can talk myself out of it, I stand and move to the door. I open it quietly. She's still there, lying on her side, eyes closed. The blanket is wrapped around her shoulders, and her breathing is soft, rhythmic. I take a step closer, guilt twisting in my gut. She looks so vulnerable, so small. My heart thuds in my chest. She stirs, blinking. When she sees me, a flicker of relief crosses her face. Kale, she murmurs. Is it safe? I nod. For now. No sign of pursuit. I linger in the doorway, torn. She shifts, making room on the narrow bunk. She doesn't say a word, just lifts the corner of the blanket in invitation. My chest constricts. I want to say no. I want to say we should keep watch, stay alert. But I'm so damn tired, and the pull of her presence is stronger than my will to resist. Wordlessly, I step forward, easing onto the bunk beside her. The space is cramped, forcing our bodies to press together. She exhales a soft sigh, and the purring starts anew, vibrating through the bunk. My tension unravels in an instant. I slide an arm under her head, letting her rest against my shoulder. Her hand drifts up, fingers brushing my collarbone. Thank you, she whispers. For saving me. For staying. I swallow. We're in this together, right? It's a weak deflection, but it's all I can manage. She doesn't press. Instead, she nestles closer, her breath warm against my neck. The closeness is overwhelming. I can feel every subtle shift of her body, the rise and fall of her chest, the gentle flutter of her eyelids as she fights sleep. Despite my fear, I let myself relax. My fingers trace the faint golden patterns on her temple. They pulse in response, like living tattoos. She makes a soft sound of contentment, the purring deepening. A warmth spreads through me that has nothing to do with body heat. It's a sense of belonging I haven't felt in years, maybe ever. We drift like that for a time, half asleep, clinging to each other. My mind wanders to the future. What happens when her people catch up to us? Or when my own enemies track me down? But for now, in this fragile moment, we're safe. The hum of the engines is steady, the lights are low, and RHY's presence soothes a part of me I didn't know was so desperate for comfort. Eventually, her breathing evens out. She's asleep. I stay awake, listening to the purr fade into soft exhales, feeling the gentle thud of her heartbeat against my ribs. My eyes drift shut. The last thing I think before sleep claims me is that I've broken my own rule. I've let someone in. And there's no going back. When I wake, she's already sitting up, fiddling with the console by the bunk. Her eyes flick to me, and she smiles, a shy expression that crinkles the corners of her alien eyes. I'm analyzing the star map, she says quietly, as if not to disturb me. We should find a habitable station or planet soon. I rub the sleep from my eyes, heart pounding as I remember where I am. The closeness we shared last night floods my senses. Yeah, I mutter, pushing to a sitting position. Good idea. She nods, then hesitates. Are you all right? I glance at her, unsure how to answer. I'm far from all right. I'm tangled in something I don't understand, a bond that started with a sleeping bag on a frozen moon. But I can't say that. So I just shrug. I'm alive. She lowers her gaze, the gold lines on her skull shifting in what I've come to recognize as sadness. Alive is good, she murmurs, but not enough. My chest tightens. Look, I will figure out what happens next. Let's just focus on finding a safe harbor. She nods, and we slip into an uneasy silence. We head to the cockpit, scanning for any signals. The NAV system picks up a faint beacon, some kind of trade station on the fringe of known space. We set a course, hoping we can refuel and maybe find a real pilot who can take us further. The thought of leaving RHYthey with someone else twists my gut, but I tell myself it's for the best. She deserves safety. I'm just a wanderer, a wanted man. My track record with relationships is a smoking crater. We drop out of FTL near the station, a ring-shaped structure orbiting a gas giant. The place looks rundown, but functional. My nerves tingle as we approach the docking bay. This is the kind of place where criminals and drifters congregate. We'll have to be on guard. But maybe we can barter for supplies or passage. We dock, paying a small fee with credits we found on the mercenaries. As we step onto the station, I immediately feel eyes on us. RHYthey stays close, her posture tense. The purring is silent, but I can sense her heightened alertness. We pass stalls selling questionable goods, neon signs flickering overhead. The air smells of stale alcohol and too many bodies in one place. A hulking reptilian alien blocks our path at one point, demanding a docking tax. I glare, hand drifting to my weapon. He backs off, muttering. RHYthey exhales in relief. We continue through the station, searching for a pilot or a route to a safer sector. My mind churns with paranoia. Are her father's men here? Are my enemies lurking around the corner? At last, we find a dingy cantina. The music is loud, the patrons rowdy. I guide RHYthey to a corner booth, scanning the crowd for anyone who looks like they might be a pilot for hire. She tucks her legs beneath her, trying to avoid the leering stares of a few patrons who notice her alien features. I grit my teeth, resisting the urge to confront them. We need to keep a low profile. We order drinks, something hot for her to chase away the lingering chill. She sips it, grimacing at the taste. Humans have strange flavors, she murmurs. I snort, taking a gulp of my own drink. It's bitter, but it warms my throat. A tall, dark-skinned human approaches our booth. He looks like he's seen better days, with a scar running across his left eyebrow. You two looking for passage? He asks, voice low. My heart quickens. This might be the break we need. But I don't trust him, not yet. Depends, I say. You a pilot? He nods, sliding into the seat across from us without invitation. Name's Jaren. I run a freighter out of the Mirian Belt. You pay, I fly. No questions asked? He glances at RHYthey, eyes lingering on her ridged skull. Unless you've got trouble following you. I exchange a glance with RHYthey. We can pay, I say, not confirming or denying the trouble part. We need to get far away from here. No ties, no logs. He shrugs. Fine by me. My ship's on docking level 7. We can leave in an hour if you've got the credits. I hesitate. The mercenaries' credits won't last forever, but hopefully enough to pay for passage. We'll meet you there, I say. He nods and leaves. I watch him go, trying to gauge if he's trustworthy. Probably not, but it's the best lead we have. Rhy sets her drink down. I have a bad feeling, she murmurs. I sigh. So do I. But what choice do we have? We pay for our drinks and head out, weaving through the station's corridors. My nerves hum, every sense on high alert. As we near docking level 7, I notice the lights flicker, and a hush falls over the crowd. Something's wrong. I motion for Rhy to stay behind me. We turn a corner and see a group of heavily armed figures. My heart sinks. They wear the same insignia as before, the crest of Rhy's lineage. They're scanning the faces of passers-by. I curse under my breath, yanking Rhy into a maintenance alcove. They found us, I whisper. Her eyes widen, fear flashing. What do we do? My mind races. Jaren's freighter is probably beyond that checkpoint. We can't get past those guards without being spotted. We need a diversion, or a different route. I glance at the map on the wall, seeing a network of service tunnels. Maybe we can bypass the main corridor. I lead Rhy down a side passage, prying open a maintenance hatch. The smell of ozone and grease hits me. We crawl through the cramped tunnel, the metal walls lit by flickering emergency lights. She tries to stifle her purring, but it rumbles softly, betraying her anxiety. I squeeze her hand, offering silent reassurance. My own heart is hammering. We emerge near docking base 73, where Jaren said he'd be. I peek out. Sure enough, there's a battered freighter with the name Helios Dawn scrawled on the side. Jaren stands by the ramp, arms folded. But he's not alone. One of Rhy's father's soldiers stands beside him, helmet off, speaking in low tones. My gut churns. Jaren must have sold us out. Or maybe the soldier found him first. Either way, we're in trouble. Rhy tenses beside me. He's telling them about us, she whispers. I see Jaren nod, passing over a small data chip. He's giving them our descriptions, probably. Rage burns in my chest. So much for trust. We need another plan, another ship. But as we inch backward, the hatch behind us slams shut. A pair of soldiers steps into view from a side corridor, weapons raised. Don't move, one snarls. We're trapped. My mind scrambles for a solution. Rhy's sonic blast might help, but there are more soldiers behind them. We can't fight them all. The soldier sneers. We know who you are, human. Hand over the air, and we'll let you live. Rhy looks at me, panic in her eyes. I tighten my grip on my weapon, even though it's hopeless. I won't let them take her without a fight. We shared warmth, she whispers, voice trembling. I won't let them harm you. My throat tightens. It's me who won't let them harm you, I growl. The soldier scoffs, stepping closer. I raise my rifle, my finger on the trigger. He laughs, confident in their numbers. Rhy's resonates, building to that powerful hum. The soldiers tense. I brace myself for a last stand. Suddenly, a shot rings out. One soldier goes down. I whip around to see Jaren standing there, smoking blaster in hand, face twisted in anger. You think I'm a snitch? He shouts. They threaten my ship, but I don't take kindly to blackmail. He fires again, and the second soldier collapses. Rhy and I stare, stunned. Jaren jerks his head toward his freighter. Hurry, before the rest show up. You still want a ride? Let's go. We don't question it. We sprint to the Helios Dawn, ducking inside as more soldiers round the corner. Jaren seals the hatch and guns the engines. The freighter lurches, lifting off the deck. Energy blasts strike the hull, but he blasts the docking clamps off, ripping free. The station's alarms blare as we soar into open space. Rhy clings to me, trembling, as we strap into seats behind the cockpit. Jaren curses under his breath, jamming the controls. You owe me extra for that, he growls. I manage a shaky nod. Fine, I say. Just get us out of here. The Helios dawn jumps to FTL, and the stars blur. My body sags with relief. We've escaped again, but barely. I glance at RHYday, her face pale, the golden lines flickering weakly. She's exhausted, and so am I. Yet somehow, I feel closer to her than ever. Each brush of her hand against mine sends a jolt of warmth through me, reminding me of that first moment in the sleeping bag. We can't escape that memory, or the bond it created. Once we're safely in hyperspace, Jaren turns to us. You better have the credits to make this worth my while, he says, not unkindly. I fish out the mercenary's credit chips. He scans them, nodding in satisfaction. All right. Where to? RHYday and I exchange a glance. We have no idea. Somewhere safe, I say. Jaren chuckles. Safe is relative, friend. But I know a place on the far side of the Mirian Belt, out of your father's reach, or whoever that was. RHYday closes her eyes, leaning against me. I sense her relief, but also a deep sadness. She's cut off from her people, branded a traitor for bonding with a human. I wrap an arm around her, ignoring Jaren's raised eyebrow. Let him think what he wants. We settle into the freighter's living quarters, a cramped space with 2 bunks. Jaren disappears to pilot, leaving us alone. RHYday collapses onto a bunk, her breathing shaky. I kneel beside her, brushing a strand of her pale hair from her face. The purring starts up again, a soft murmur. Hey, I whisper, my voice rough. You all right? She looks at me with eyes full of conflicted emotions. I am not used to running like this. My entire life, I was sheltered. Protected. Now, her voice breaks. I feel a pang of sympathy. Now you're stuck with me, I say, forcing a wry smile. She nods, her lips curving in a faint grin that doesn't reach her eyes. I rest a hand on her cheek, letting my thumb trace the outline of her jaw. Her skin is warmer than before, maybe from all the adrenaline. She closes her eyes, turning her face into my palm. For a moment, we just breathe. The hum of the engines lulls me, and the purring from her chest resonates with my own heartbeat. I know we're not safe yet. Her father's reach is long, and my enemies are everywhere. But in this cramped bunk, with her body pressed against mine, I feel a flicker of hope. Maybe we can find a way to exist in this galaxy without fear. Maybe we can build something, even if it started with an accident of survival. She opens her eyes again, searching my face. Kale, she murmurs. We shared warmth on that moon. That was the start. But now I feel more. My people say the bond can deepen, become something sacred. But only if we allow it. My heart thuds. I've never been one for sacred bonds. I'm a drifter, a runaway. Yet I can't deny the pull I feel toward her. What does that mean? I ask, my voice hushed. She hesitates, looking vulnerable. It means we choose each other or we don't. It cannot be undone lightly. Once fully accepted, it's permanent. My breath catches. I recall my vow never to let anyone close, to avoid the pain of loss. But here she is, offering a bond that might be the only real thing I've ever had. I don't know if I can do permanent, I admit, my voice cracking. Her gaze lowers. I understand. There's a tremor in her voice that twists my gut. She tries to pull away, but I stop her, cupping her cheek. RHYday, I whisper, leaning in. I'm scared. I've lost everyone I ever cared about. But I can't lose you, too. The admission is like tearing open an old wound. She exhales a shaky breath, the purring intensifying. Our faces are inches apart. I can feel the warmth of her breath, the softness of her lips. My heart hammers. We close the distance almost without thinking. Our mouths meet in a tentative kiss, then deepen with a sudden hunger. The tension of all we've been through ignites, and I find myself pulling her closer, my hand tangling in her strange, pale hair. She presses against me, the purring turning into a low moan that vibrates through my bones. Every brush of our lips, every shift of her body, is a jolt of electric heat. It's not gentle. It's desperate, messy, a collision of emotions we've been holding back. I taste the salt of her tears, or maybe they're mine. We break apart only when we're both gasping for air. Her eyes shine with that golden light, her cheeks flushed. I stare at her, breath ragged, mind reeling. We should be careful, I manage to say, though my body screams for more. She nods, but she doesn't move away. Her hands rest on my shoulders, trembling. I know, she whispers. But I don't want to be careful right now. I swallow hard, letting my forehead rest against hers. The hum of the ship envelopes us, and for a moment, everything else fades. No mercenaries, no father's wrath, no uncertain future. Just this moment of raw, undeniable connection. I kiss her again, softer this time, savoring the warmth of her lips. She sighs into me, her arms slipping around my neck. Time blurs. We lose ourselves in each other, clumsy and intense, discovering the contours of our bodies. Her skin glows in patterns that shift with each touch, mesmerizing me. My breath catches at the way her hips press against mine, how her nails rake lightly across my back. I feel a wild surge of protectiveness and desire. This bond, whatever it is, has already taken root in me, and I can't pull free. Eventually, we collapse onto the bunk, panting, half tangled in the blanket. She rests her head on my chest, her purr gentle now, like a cat content after a storm. My hand drifts along her spine, feeling the ridges beneath her skin. I realize I'm trembling, not from cold, but from the intensity of it all. The closeness, the vulnerability, the sheer insanity of falling for an alien princess on the run. Her fingers brush my cheek. Kale, she says softly. Are you still scared? I close my eyes. Terrified, I admit. But I don't pull away. Instead, I tighten my hold on her, letting the moment wash over me. She nods, understanding. We lie there, hearts pounding, until our breathing steadies. At some point, Jaren's voice crackles over the calm, announcing we're dropping out of FTL soon. We scramble to dress, exchanging a shy glance. The memory of our frantic kisses lingers on my lips, and I see the same heat in her eyes. Neither of us speaks of it, but the bond has undeniably grown. We head to the cockpit. Jaren eyes us with mild amusement, but doesn't comment. He points to the viewport. We're approaching a backwater planet called Illyra. Not much here but a few outposts. You want me to drop you off, or keep going? I glance at RHY. She shrugs, uncertain. I sense her fatigue. We need rest, a place to lay low. Illyra, I say. We'll see if we can find some peace there. Jaren nods, adjusting the controls. We descend into the atmosphere of a desert world, golden dunes stretching to the horizon. The heat is oppressive after the ice moon, but I welcome it if it means no more freezing. Jaren sets us down near a small settlement, dust swirling around the landing gear. We gather our belongings, stepping out into the blazing sun. The air shimmers with heat, and I feel RHY's hands slip into mine. A wave of relief washes over me. This time, I don't pull away. Jaren stands at the top of the ramp. Good luck, you two. And try not to get me killed next time. I toss him a wry grin. No promises. He laughs, then seals the hatch. The Helios dawn lifts off, leaving us in a swirl of dust. We watch it go, then turn to face the settlement. A few squat buildings, a market stall or two, and the hum of a generator. It's quiet, unremarkable. Exactly what we need. We wander into the settlement, drawing a few curious stares. RHY's appearance is hard to miss. But no one seems hostile. We find a rundown hostel offering rooms. I pay for a few nights with the last of our mercenary credits. The owner barely glances at us, more interested in her battered datapad. Fine by me. Inside the cramped room, we set down our gear. A single bed, a small table, a rickety fan whirring overhead. RHY sinks onto the bed with a sigh, running her fingers through her pale hair. This is different from my home, she murmurs. I can only imagine what kind of palace she must have come from. I sit beside her, letting the silence stretch. She glances at me, then at the bed, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. We only have one bed, she says, half teasing. My heart flips. I recall our frantic closeness on the bunk of the freighter. A surge of heat flushes my skin. But I force a smirk. We've shared a sleeping bag on a frozen moon, I point out. I think we can handle one bed. She laughs softly, and the sound warms me more than the desert sun outside. We settle in, awkwardly at first, then finding a comfortable closeness. Her head rests on my shoulder, the purring faint but ever present. For a while, we just lie there, letting the tension seep away. My thoughts drift to the future. We can't hide forever, but maybe we can stay here, at least until we heal. RHY's father's men might come eventually, but this backwater planet offers anonymity for now. I close my eyes, the memory of her lips still fresh. I wonder if this is what peace feels like. Days pass. We fall into a quiet routine. We buy food at the market, we share the bed at night, we talk about trivial things to avoid the looming question of what comes next. Sometimes we hold each other in silence, purring softly. Other times we spar with words, me refusing to believe in her talk of sacred bonds, her insisting it's real. Our arguments always end the same way, in each other's arms, breathless, hearts pounding. But the peace can't last. One afternoon, we return from the market to find a stranger waiting in our room, a tall, silver-haired alien with the same ridged skull as RHY, though more ornate. He wears regal robes and carries a staff. My gut clenches. RHY stiffens beside me, fear flashing in her eyes. Daughter, the alien says, voice dripping with authority. You've caused quite a scandal. RHY's face pales. Father, she whispers, confirming my worst fear. My hand drops to my sidearm, but he lifts a hand in warning. A subtle wave of energy pulses out, freezing me in place. I can't move. RHY tries to step forward, but she's also held by some invisible force. Her father gazes at her with stern disapproval. Bonding with a human, he says, voice cold. Do you know what you've done? You've tainted our lineage. The council demands your return. Your bond must be severed. RHY's eyes brim with tears. I won't sever it, she chokes out. Kale saved my life. He sneers at me. Humans are beneath us. This was a mistake. But it can be undone, if you come home willingly. RHY's purring rises, a trembling note of defiance. No, she says, voice quivering but resolute. I choose him. Her father's eyes narrow. Then you leave me no choice. He lifts his staff, chanting words I don't understand. Pain explodes in my chest. I gasp, collapsing to my knees, the invisible force crushing me. RHY cries out, struggling to move. My vision blurs. No! She screams, fighting whatever hold he has on her. The purring turns into a wild, discordant sound. Golden light flares from her skull ridges, swirling around her. A surge of energy blasts out, knocking her father back. I gasp for breath, the pressure easing. RHY staggers to my side, wrapping her arms around me. Her father rises, shock in his eyes. You dare unleash the bond's power on me? He roars, brandishing the staff. The room trembles. Dust sifts from the ceiling. I clutch RHY, my heart pounding. If this continues, the entire building might collapse. I fumble for my sidearm, aiming it at him, but he sneers. You think a human weapon can harm me? RHY places her hand over mine, lowering the gun. Her eyes burn with a fierce resolve. Father, she says, voice shaking. I love him. The words stun me. She's never said that outright. My heart twists. Her father's rage distorts his features. He raises the staff again. Then you are lost to me, he hisses, unleashing a bolt of energy. RHY pushes me aside, taking the brunt of it. She screams, collapsing to the floor. My soul lurches. I scramble to her, ignoring the agony that sears my nerves. She's alive, but barely. Her eyes flicker open, the golden lines dimming. Kale, she whispers, tears streaking her cheeks. Run. I can't run. I won't. I gather her in my arms, glaring at her father. Something ignites in my chest, a surge of protective fury. I feel the bond between us, the heat we first shared on that frozen moon. My entire being focuses on that memory, on the primal closeness that saved our lives. The purring starts in my chest. Impossible, but real. It resonates with RHY's own trembling hum. Her father staggers, confusion in his eyes. What are you doing? He demands. The bond's energy crackles in the air. I hold RHY tight, letting the purring merge. My body vibrates with an alien power, fueled by love, desperation, and a refusal to let her go. The staff in her father's hand flickers, the energy sputtering. Enough. I growl, my voice echoing with the bond's resonance. RHY clings to me, the golden lines on her skull flaring back to life. We rise to our feet together, facing him. He tries to lift the staff, but the bond's energy ripples outward, shattering his hold. He drops the staff, staggering back. You can't break us, RHY says, her voice layered with the purring. We choose each other. Her father's eyes burn with fury and grief. For a moment, I see heartbreak behind his rage. Then he scoffs, stepping back. You have no place among our people now. You've forsaken your birthright. He points a trembling finger at me. And you, human! You've doomed her to exile. I tighten my hold on RHY, anger warring with relief. She's not doomed, I say quietly. She's free. Her father's face twists with disgust. Then, in a flash of light, he vanishes, some teleportation trick. The force that held us in place dissipates. We're alone, the air crackling with residual energy. RHY sags against me, tears in her eyes. He's gone, she whispers. He won't stop trying to bring me back. I press my forehead to hers, the purring in my chest mingling with hers. Then we'll keep running, I say. Together. She nods, tears spilling down her cheeks, but she smiles. I lift her into my arms, carrying her to the bed. She's shaking, her body still recovering from the energy blast. I hold her gently, letting the bond's warmth envelop us. She clutches my shirt, purring softly, her eyes full of pain and hope. Kale, she murmurs. Do you truly want this? Me? Even if it means we'll never stop looking over our shoulders? I brush a thumb across her cheek, my heart pounding with conviction. I want you, I say, voice firm. We'll face whatever comes. That night on the frozen moon, it changed everything. She exhales a shaky laugh, tears still shining. I never expected a sleeping bag would be my undoing, she admits. I can't help but smile, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. It was the start of something neither of us understood, I say. But You have warmth. She gasped as the wind howled outside, battering the thin metal walls of my shelter. Her voice cut through the fury of the storm like a blade, raw and insistent. Before I could even register what was happening, she had already pushed the flap of my sleeping bag aside and crawled in beside me. Her skin was bone-pale and nearly luminescent in the emergency light, a strange, otherworldly glow accentuated by faint, shifting golden lines that traced delicate patterns over her ridged skull. I stared, frozen by shock and cold, as she pressed her trembling form against mine, and then, as if to seal some unspoken pact, she began purring, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through my chest. Stop it, I managed, voice rough with disbelief and the chill of the night. My heart pounded, a mix of adrenaline and confusion. What the hell do you think you're doing? I barked, half expecting her to be a hallucination born from the frostbite creeping into my limbs. But she only repeated, almost serenely, You have warmth. Her eyes wide and imploring. I need it. I must share. There was no explanation, only a desperate vulnerability that left me teetering between anger and pity. I hesitated, knowing that in this freezing chaos, survival trumped every rule I'd ever lived by, even if it meant letting an alien invade my space. Before I could protest further, a sudden roar of wind and the creak of metal reminded me that we weren't alone. The battered shelter shuddered as the storm intensified, and my instincts screamed that both of us would perish if we didn't move. I gripped her slender arm as we scrambled to our feet, the purring never ceasing, even as my mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why, in the midst of chaos, was her presence so inexplicably magnetic? I pulled her close, even as every fiber of my being urged me to reject this intimacy, to treat her like an intruder. But the biting cold had a way of stripping away pretenses. We bolted out into the swirling white, my every step a desperate bid to escape the storm's relentless assault. The snow was knee-deep and treacherous, and as I glanced back, I caught sight of her pale form pressed against mine, a vision of fragile determination and otherworldly beauty. The purring grew louder as we ducked behind shattered chunks of metal from my crashed craft. I clutched my sidearm, scanning the horizon for any threat, only to see shapes shifting in the blinding flurry. Pack hunters, perhaps, drawn by the scent of our fear and desperation. I fired a shot that lit up the dark, sending one of the creatures reeling back into the storm. In that brief moment of chaos, as energy bolts crisscrossed the air, she leaned into me, her purring mingling with the roar of the wind, and I couldn't tell if the warmth I felt was from the heat of my body or the inexplicable pull of her presence. We pressed on until we found refuge behind a rocky outcrop, the natural barrier offering a fragile shield from the biting wind. My heart pounded as I set up a temporary camp, still reeling from the surreal encounter. Every time her purring resonated, it felt as if it unlocked a part of me I'd long buried under years of solitude and distrust. I told myself it was just survival, a necessary sharing of heat, but as I watched her shiver less against me, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something more dangerous at play. Time passed in a blur of frantic movement and whispered questions. When the storm finally subsided, we ventured out into a landscape transformed by ice and shadow. Our footsteps crunched over fresh snow, and every now and then I caught a glimpse of her luminous eyes scanning our surroundings with both wonder and terror. It was clear she wasn't built for this harsh reality, that her delicate physiology required the very warmth we'd clung to in that cramped shelter. And yet she seemed strangely at home in the chaos, as if the very act of purring was both a comfort and a declaration, a ritualistic claim that bound her to me in ways I still didn't understand. In the midst of our desperate escape, we stumbled upon a small freighter, its hull battered but still functional. The sight of it sparked a fleeting hope, an exit from this frozen nightmare. We moved quickly, evading patrolling mercenaries whose shadows loomed large amid the ruined wreckage of my once prized craft. With barely a moment to exchange a glance, she repeated those haunting words in her soft, otherworldly cadence. "You have warmth." The phrase echoed in my mind as we fought off our pursuers, her purring resonating like a heartbeat in sync with mine. In one frenetic burst of courage, I managed to secure the freighter while she unleashed a pulsating sonic wave that sent our enemies staggering back into the abyss of the storm. Inside the cramped vessel, amid sparking consoles and failing life support systems, we caught our breath. I barely had time to scavenge what little we could, a nearly spent sidearm, a few precious rations, and a damaged communication device, before the weight of our shared ordeal pressed down on us. With every beat of my heart, I felt that impossible bond deepen, growing from a survival necessity into something raw and undeniably real. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was merely a consequence of desperate circumstances, yet the intimacy of our forced proximity left me questioning every rule I'd ever lived by. We set course for an abandoned orbital station, a relic from a bygone era that might offer refuge. As the freighter hurtled through the void, I couldn't help but notice the way she watched me, her eyes flickering with curiosity and an emotion I'd long learned to mistrust. "I'm Kale," I mumbled, almost unaware that I was saying it aloud, as if hoping that naming myself would anchor me to reality. She murmured back a single word. "Rhy," a name that seemed to shimmer with unspoken histories and unyielding destiny. There was no time for introductions or explanations. The urgency of survival pressed upon us like the crushing weight of gravity. Upon docking, we found the station crawling with hostile figures, mercenaries and agents of a powerful, alien regime that recognized RHY's presence as a profound betrayal. In their eyes, the act of sharing warmth was not a simple survival tactic, but an unbreakable bond, one that defied centuries of tradition and carried consequences that would echo across galaxies. Their intent was clear: return her to her people at any cost. I barely had time to react as I saw the leader, stern and unforgiving, confront her with cold authority. "You have bonded with him," he spat, the accusation hanging in the stale air of the control room. "You must come back. This union is forbidden." Anger and fear warred within me. I had survived countless battles and betrayals, yet nothing could have prepared me for this collision of worlds, the raw, primal magnetism of an alien claim, a cultural edict that turned shared survival into a treacherous liability. My voice, rough with adrenaline, replied, "I didn't claim anything, I just saved you." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. That night, when she had clung to me for warmth, she had etched herself into my very soul, and I into hers. The mercenaries' contempt and the alien decree alike could not undo that moment. The ensuing struggle was relentless and brutal. Amid blaster fire and the chaos of shattering metal, they unleashed a power hidden deep within her, a resonant, vibrating energy that transformed her purring into a weapon. With each pulse, the bond between us flared, intertwining our fates with an intensity that left the room trembling. I fought alongside her, my sidearm firing desperately as we pressed back against those who would force us apart. In the heat of battle, our shared warmth became a shield, a defiant proclamation that no decree or tradition could sever the connection we had forged. When the dust finally settled and our foes lay defeated or scattered, we found ourselves alone in a silent chamber, hearts pounding in unison. The storm of conflict had passed, but its echoes lingered in every breath. They knelt by me, concern in her luminous eyes as she traced a finger over a wound on my cheek. "Do you understand what we have done?" she whispered, voice quavering between awe and sorrow. "Our bond is now sacred, permanent. My people would never accept it, but it is our truth." I looked down at her, the weight of our shared ordeal settling heavily upon me. Every memory of that first, desperate moment, the way she crawled into my sleeping bag, the way her purring resonated with my heartbeat, returned in a rush. I recalled the shuddering cold, the wild fear, and inexplicably the fierce warmth that had ignited something long dormant within me. "I'm scared," I admitted in a hushed tone, not daring to meet her eyes for too long. "I've lost everyone I ever cared about. I never meant to let anyone in." Her delicate hand cupped my cheek, and in that touch I felt the full force of our collision, an intermingling of pain and passion, of fear and hope. "Then we face the future together," she murmured, her voice steadier now. "We choose each other, even if it means a life on the run." The words hung in the air like a promise and a curse all at once. That night, we found solace in the wreckage of our battered haven. There were no grand declarations or promises of forever, only the quiet intimacy of two souls clinging to the only truth they had in a universe that sought to tear them apart. We lay side by side on a makeshift cot, our bodies intertwined in a fragile embrace, the purring a lullaby that carried us into a restless sleep. In the darkness, I could still feel her warmth, a living testament to a bond that had been forged in the crucible of chaos and survival. Days turned into a tense, uncertain routine as we navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the ancient orbital station. We scavenged for supplies, made uneasy alliances with fellow drifters, and always remained on guard. The specter of her father's wrath loomed over every whispered conversation, every cautious glance exchanged in the dim light of broken consoles. Yet even in the midst of danger and despair, there were moments of tenderness that defied the harshness of our reality. One such evening, as we huddled in a cramped room lit by a single, sputtering lamp, RHY's voice broke the silence. "I remember that night on the ice," she said softly, her eyes distant. "When I first felt the warmth of your body, when I realized that in that desperate moment, I was not alone." Her words tumbled out in a rush of emotion that left me momentarily speechless. I reached out, tracing the shifting patterns on her temple, feeling the steady hum of her purring as if it were a heartbeat. I never wanted this, I confess, but I can't imagine a life without it now. Her fingers intertwined with mine, and in that touch, I felt all the risks and rewards of our bond. We had been thrust together by fate, by a chance encounter in the heart of a storm, and now we faced a future that was as uncertain as it was inevitable. Every challenge, every battle we fought, only deepened the connection between us, a connection that transcended culture, species, and all the old scars I'd carried for too long. Our days were punctuated by small victories and crushing setbacks. We repaired broken equipment, evaded patrols sent by her vengeful kin, and forged alliances with those who saw beyond our differences. In the midst of it all, our HY's purring became our secret language, a reminder of that fateful night and the inexplicable warmth that had bound us. And though every heartbeat carried the risk of discovery and the threat of separation, there were moments when, in the quiet after a storm, we allowed ourselves to believe that maybe, just maybe, love could be a refuge in this unforgiving universe. There were times I lay awake, haunted by memories of betrayal and loss, wondering if I had finally allowed myself to be vulnerable again. But then I would feel her hand in mine, hear the soft, continuous cadence of her purring, and know that even if our path was strewn with danger, we were no longer alone. Every stolen glance, every whispered word in the dark, built a bridge between two hearts that had never meant to meet, yet found in each other a reason to keep fighting. And so we continued, running from the past, from enemies both human and alien, forging ahead in a landscape that was as brutal as it was breathtaking. Each encounter, each moment of peril, reminded us that our bond was both a blessing and a curse. It had started with the most unlikely of moments, a collision in a sleeping bag, and it had grown into a force that neither of us could escape. A force that was as dangerous as it was beautiful. In the quiet hours before dawn, as I held her close in a modest room on a dusty outpost planet, I realized that every scar, every lost battle, had led me to this very moment. I had been hardened by survival, taught never to let anyone in. And yet here she was, RHY, with her alien beauty and her relentless, tender purring, daring to break through the walls I'd built around my heart. I pressed my forehead to hers and whispered, "I'm yours if you'll have me." Her eyes glowed with unshed tears and fierce determination as she answered simply, "Always." In that unspoken promise, amidst the danger and uncertainty of our lives on the run, we found a fleeting peace. The universe was vast and unforgiving, but for now, in our shared warmth and the echo of our purring hearts, we dared to believe in the possibility of something real. Something sacred. And though the road ahead was shrouded in shadow, I knew that as long as we had each other, we could face whatever the cosmos hurled our way. The night deepened, and the distant hum of a generator mingled with our steady breaths. Our bond, born of desperation and sealed in a moment of shared survival, had become a light in the darkness, a promise that even in a cold, indifferent galaxy, love could ignite and endure. And as I drifted off to sleep, her soft purr lulling me into a fragile, hopeful slumber, I realized that our collision, as chaotic and unexpected as it had been, was the beginning of a story that was ours alone. We had crossed thresholds we never knew existed, and in doing so, had redefined the very essence of what it meant to be alive. And as the stars wheeled silently overhead in the vast emptiness of space, I clung to that truth, that in the midst of chaos, in the heart of the storm, we had found something worth fighting for, a warmth that would never fade, no matter how cold the universe might be.